So, welcome back, Barry. It's great to have you to Raw and Cooked Vegan.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So, now you got several topics you want to do. Do you have any particular order you want to go in, or what would you like to do first?
Well, I have some topics. I mean, maybe I'll just, I have like the first topic, and then maybe we can see where we go.
Okay.
All right. So I know from one of our previous interviews, I had mentioned Lauren Lockman to you, and I think you did like a full-length interview with him, right?
Yeah, I had like a three-parter with him, and I even lost a part, so I didn't get all of it. But he was excellent, very interesting guy.
Yeah, he's great. He has this idea of, you have like a level of health, right? And if you have a really bad level of health, as long as you eat something a little less bad, you're going to feel better. And if you have a very high level of health, almost anything is going to make you feel worse. And this is a really interesting idea. Like, wherever you're at, it's hard to say, well, is something healthy, or is something good for me? It's all kind of relative to where you are at that point. So I mean, if you're eating a terrible diet, almost anything is going to make you feel a little bit better. Like if you're eating a really bad processed food diet, I would say if you go on the paleo diet, you're going to feel better. And people might say, wow, this is the diet, the paleo diet.
Yeah.
But, I mean, my contention would be, well, if you go from the paleo diet to a vegan diet, one where you're limiting processed food, you're going to feel even better.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of the point I wanted to make here was it's hard to really say with 100% accuracy, these are the things that are good for you and these are the things that are bad. You kind of have to look at where you are on your particular journey. And along with that, I think one thing you have to do, and anyone who's watching this, I mean, this is like my primary advice. You have to experiment on all the ideas out there and see how it affects you. Because there's so many, people, there's a lot of ideas out there where one group of people says one thing and another group of people, one group of people would say something, like I'll take it for example, because I want to talk about this more later, like distilled water.
Yeah.
Okay. One group of people would say, you must drink pure distilled water. It's health promoting.
Yep.
Another group of people would say distilled water is bad.
Yeah.
And I think, it gets very confusing with all the information and all the opinions out there. It gets confusing about what you should actually do. And my advice would be to experiment on yourself. Take all of these different ideas that seem reasonable and that, people that you respect and trust are suggesting, and try them out on yourself. Because even people that you might have a lot of respect for, they're still different than you. They might be in a different place than you are, and it might be good for them, but maybe you're not ready to take that step. And so, my advice would always be to experiment with different things, try them out, give it some time, and see how you react. And if it's a positive experience, then you kind of make it part of your permanent routine. And if it's not such a positive experience, you just push it aside and look for different ideas.
Barry, this is a really huge thing. I think you're touching on so many interesting questions that arise, and it really gets to the heart of this kind of ongoing discussion between raw food vegans and cooked food vegans, which is very much what my whole thing is about,
Yeah.
So I think, I used to really feel strongly that there must be some biological diet that's best suited for Homo sapien.
Yeah.
There must be.
There is.
Now, I mean, every other animal has one.
Right.
So it seemed to me that there's a lot of useful information to be derived from looking at primates. What exactly do they eat? How close is that to what we eat? What happens when our diet starts to approach what primates eat? How similar to primates are we? And to what extent did evolution move us away from what primates were eating, and what role did technology, including fire and the cooking of foods, and also the eating of meat, what role did that play in evolutionary development?
Right.
And even with whatever evolutionary changes may be discerned, and that's all debatable, but to what extent those can be discerned, how significant are they? You have how long did evolution last? I mean, we're talking about millions of years.
Right.
Right? And we have about 100,000 years where we've got the technology to alter foods so that foods that were otherwise not digestible became digestible.
Right.
But I guess I'm kind of throwing a lot in here, but I think the conclusion I've reached is that that some evolutionary changes did take place that coincided with the introduction of cooked food in the human diet. And so, in other words, humans adapted to some degree to cooked food. And it seems to me, and you can tell me your take on this, it seems that there's enough people that have difficulty with a strictly raw food regimen that something's not right. So now I know a lot of people have tremendous success on a raw food regimen. And not only tremendous success, but they excel athletically. I mean, you could say there are some people doing this that have the greatest health possible. I'm sure Loren Lockman would say that. And I remember, some of his experiences are evidence of that.
Yeah.
And yet I also know other folks who have been unable to do the raw food thing for a variety of reasons. And I don't do it myself. I eat quite a bit of cooked food.
Yeah,
so,
it's tough. I mean, I think the first time I did an interview with you was about a year ago, and I was eating totally raw then. I'm not eating all raw now.
Okay.
And I mean, there's a lot of things I would want to say. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of foods that are that benefit from cooking. I mean, if you cook tomatoes, there is a lot of good things in the cooked tomato. If you cook carrots, there's a lot of good things that you can't get from the raw carrot. All right. I mean, I think eating raw food is always ideal because there's this enzymes concept. Whenever you cook any food, the enzymes are destroyed. And I read this book recently by this guy, Dr. Howell, and there's a lot of contention about his conclusions. But he basically said, we have kind of a limited amount of enzymes, and we really need to conserve them. It costs a lot of vital life energy to create the enzymes, and when we destroy the enzymes that are in food, our body has to create them ourselves. The pancreas has to create them, and he did experiments where he showed that the pancreas was twice as big within humans as in other animals, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Huh.
So
what's the implication of that? That the pancreas has had to work really hard because
it has to do more work to create more enzymes to digest the food because we're not eating food that already has the enzymes there.
Now let me ask you on that. From what I was saying earlier, one might argue, well, that's one of these evolutionary adaptations that human beings have undergone in order to enable them to eat cooked food.
Yeah, it may be. But, getting back to like the raw and versus the cooked food and primates, we don't live like primates. We live in houses. We live in cold environments. We've diverged so far from the environments that we evolved in. Now, when I ate raw last winter, and I got to tell you, it was brutal because every time I ate, I was freezing. I was freezing all the time. I was always cold.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you're in New Jersey?
I'm in New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like, this isn't like Alaska.
No.
But it's a cold winter. Yeah.
Right. So it was very hard to eat raw through the winter. But conversely, if I was living in, I'm assuming man evolved in the tropical rainforest, roaming around, scavenging for berries, and, fasting quite a bit of the time, in a warm tropical environment, where they had a lot of sun exposure, they got a lot of exercise. It's just, I mean, that's so foreign to the way we live now. So, you know, yes, I mean, I still think the raw diet is the ideal diet. But, you know, we're not living in that ideal environment.
Let me ask you, how long did you do raw? And then when you started to incorporate some cooked foods back into the diet, what happened in terms of your health?
You know, this gets back to the idea of just experimenting with different things. I ate raw probably for about 8 or 9 months, and, you know, like I went through the winter, and, you know, it's tough. I mean, I have a wife and children. They eat a lot of vegan food, thankfully, but they weren't eating raw through the winter. And so it was tough. Like, you know, we would always be eating different things. So that's a problem.
Are they vegan? Are they vegan?
They eat a lot of vegan food. I would say, you know, my wife and my 2 children probably 80 to 90% vegan.
Okay.
But, you know, so when I kind of went from raw back into cooked food, I mean, I'm really particular about the cooked food that I eat. I mean, it's literally like split peas, squash, sweet potatoes, rice,
and very low fat. So what's your take on oils?
I eat a little bit of olive oil, but I think you probably shouldn't eat any oils at all.
Yep.
I eat nuts. I mean, you know, I've experimented with nuts. I feel great eating nuts. You know, I know other people say it's, you know, there's more fat in it, but, you know, I eat, you know, organic, sprouted, raw almonds. I mean, I have trouble seeing how that's bad. You know?
You're doing it the right way, man. I mean, that's, yeah.
So I have trouble, you know, I think a lot of people talk about, you know, eating very low fat. You know, I'm 135 pounds. You know, I eat nuts. I never gain weight. You know, I exercise. And so I don't really see the problem out there.
Yeah, and, you know, I think you're reminding me of some videos done by Dr. Greger. He's a big proponent of some nuts.
Definitely, yeah. And you got to look at it. I mean, human beings probably evolved eating nuts. I mean, I think it's safe to say that nuts was like a basic food item, you know?
Yeah, I would say not a huge percentage of the diet, but yes, definitely part of the diet, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, so the other thing that I touched on before was, you know, early man, this was a species that fasted. I mean, fasting was, you know, not something they chose to do. Yeah. But I just have to assume that fasting was a big part of our evolution. Like, we evolved in a state where we were hungry. And I think the body, you know, fasting is not an easy thing to do. And I've kind of been doing, I don't have much experience fasting. I've done like 36-hour fasts. But lately I've just been doing intermittent fasting, which I eat 2 meals a day. I eat a huge lunch and a huge dinner. And I fast from around 6 p.m. to around noon the next day. So I really eat in like a 6-hour window, and I fast the other 18.
Interesting.
And I have to tell you, I have not lost any weight doing this. And, you know, in my little 6-hour window, I'm really feasting. I mean, I'm eating a lot of food. But I feel really good. There gets to be a period where you start to feel a little hungry, but I never feel weak. And I kind of feel, my body feel like, before I got into the fasting, I kind of had this feeling where I would get up and I would run in the morning, and I'd have breakfast. And I felt like I was having trouble ever fully digesting my food. Like, I was always digesting food. And I think when you go with that intermittent fasting, where you kind of narrow the window where you're eating, you still get the same amount of calories, right? But you give your body a chance to finish the digestion process and do other work throughout your body. You know, and what I mean by that is, like, when you're digesting, your body, maybe this is a ridiculous idea, but this is what I'm thinking. When you're digesting food, your body's kind of just focused on that. And it doesn't really have a chance to do a lot of the other chores that your body needs to do. When you do intermittent fasting, you really finish the digestion process after, by like midnight, and you have another 12 hours where your body can do other stuff. And I'm really feeling great. It doesn't really bother me at all now. I go 18 hours and, really only like the last hour, like from 11 to 12, then I'm like, well, I can't wait to have lunch. But for the most part, my body I feel younger. I mean, I really feel it's a positive thing. So I would really urge anybody out there to consider fasting. And, if you listen to Lauren Lockman, he thinks fasting is like a gold mine. He thinks it's the best way to improve your health.
Let me tell you a story. Have you ever heard of the? I don't know the full myth. There's a mythological story of Cassandra. You know the story?
No.
Well, she was blessed with the ability to foresee the future, but she was cursed that no one would believe her predictions.
Okay. Wow.
So she'd be yelling, telling people, this is going to happen, and no one would ever believe her, and then it would happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what I feel like with the vegan thing. It's like you're yelling at the top of your lungs from the rooftops, and you still get, 600,000 deaths from heart attacks every year. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know how that got triggered in my mind, but basically I feel like that's what we're doing, and I know what I wanted to tell you. I really got into Lauren Lockman when you referred me to him, and I think he's doing great stuff, and I'm a big believer in natural hygiene.
Yeah. And
I don't think he would characterize what he does precisely as natural hygiene, but it's very similar.
It's very similar, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit. I think it's unfortunate that the paleo group has taken on fasting as part of their regimen, because I think fasting is a useful thing, especially in terms of what you were saying, like kind of reaching an optimum level of digestion in the way you're doing it. You're doing kind of like a daily skipping breakfast, but also in terms of if someone does a more lengthy fast, say 5, 10, 15, 20 days, there are things that the body will do that it does not do if you're eating every day.
Yeah. Sure.
And I love what Lauren talks about, this optimum level of health, which you were alluding to earlier here, that it's really hard to say. Dr. Shelton had a term, a pathogenic norm. A pathogenic norm. If the whole culture is eating a sad diet, then you think healthy is on a sad diet.
Right.
Because we have such a small percentage of the society that's low-fat, raw, vegan or whatever, you don't have enough data to compare it to the huge numbers of people. And I think that fuels this kind of lack of knowledge within the medical community. They're dealing with this very sick public. If you do statistics or tests or studies, and everybody that's a participant in the study has horrible health, what's your baseline? You have nothing to compare,
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's why I think this idea of experimenting on yourself, trying a lot of different ideas and see what works for you. I mean, that's a good way to go. I mean, nutritionfacts.org gives you a lot of information about, the medical testing that's out there. And Dr. Greger makes a fantastic justification for eating vegan. I mean, if you watch his videos and you don't get it, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and it also interests me, like your experience. You were doing the raw thing, and then in the winter it became kind of challenging. And someone like Lauren Lockman, he's in Costa Rica, right? I mean, you're in a tropical environment. You can get papayas very easily. I mean, it's a different kind of scenario.
I think also, I mean, I don't think this is the case with Lauren Lockman, but I think a lot of other people out there have this problem where they're kind of their self-worth comes from the purity of their diet.
Yeah.
And they kind of take a lot of pride that they're eating 100% raw. And I'm sorry, it's just, I mean, I went out with friends. I had a glass of wine the other night. I mean, I generally don't drink. I mean, I almost never drink alcohol. I had a half glass of wine, and guess what? I felt fine. I mean, so I think a lot of people get a little bit too hung up with the 100% purity or the idea of eating 100% raw. I mean, if I could say one thing to you, if you eat 80% raw, if you eat 80% water-rich fruit, and then on the side you eat some, for me, I love split pea soup. I love eating squash. I love sweet potatoes. I eat these things. I still feel great. It's not like I eat them and I'm like, oh my God, I ate something that wasn't raw. I'm going to feel terrible. I don't feel that way.
Well, one of my friends who comments on this issue sometimes, he makes a point. He thinks that many who do go the full raw route have had so many digestive issues that they were kind of forced to do it, and they couldn't really eat anything else.
Right.
And there may be a percentage of the population that just has very sensitive digestion, and it's very hard for them to break everything down.
Well, I mean, I think this is a road that you go along too, because once you get to the point where you're eating like a fruit-based diet, I mean, there's not a lot. I can't eat that much food. Like, I can't eat white potatoes. I mean, that's a pretty benign food. It causes big problems for me.
Huh.
So, I mean, once the further along you get on this road, most foods don't sit very well with you.
Interesting. Yeah.
So for me, when I say I eat cooked food, I mean, it's a really small set of things that I eat. And they're really benign. I mean, I don't eat pasta. I don't really eat bread very often. I'm okay with rice, but I really keep it very tight on what I eat for cooked food.
Can you eat a sweet potato?
Yeah, sweet potatoes I like, because sweet potatoes are different than white potatoes. Just to put this out there, white potatoes are a nightshade. And a lot of people, I mean, there are people that have problems. Like, I had blood in my stool from eating white potatoes.
Okay.
And, a lot of people have, digestive problems with white potatoes. And sometimes it's hard to really pin down. Like, I didn't know what was causing this problem. And I never assumed it was potatoes.
Were those organic potatoes?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay. But, yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, at the same time, I feel like, Dr. McDougall's onto something when he talks about these cultures. Civilization, the rise of civilization coincided with large-scale use of carbohydrates in the diet. I think that's a very relevant point.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to this getting to more and more raw, and I think there's also something telling about the fact that if someone does a lengthy fast and then you break the fast, what do you break the fast with? You break it with fruit. You break it with fruit.
Exactly, because it's the most easily digest food. I mean, it's the most natural food. Right.
So I think there's a huge pointer there, and the notion that one has to develop the what do we say? We have a term. When kids learn how to drink coffee or something, they say it's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
It's an acquired taste. Right. Why is it an acquired taste? It's because it tastes like crap the first time you drink it.
Yeah, it's a poison that you're getting adapted to. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like smoking. You smoke your first cigarette, you're hacking and coughing, you get a head rush. I remember when I first smoked cigarettes, you got this head rush, but then after a while it wears off and it's just killing you, but you don't get all the immediate defenses from the body.
Right. Yeah, but regarding that, Dr. McDougall and the starch-based solution, there's not a lot of places in the world where you can grow enough, tropical water-rich fruit where it can, feed, where it can supply 100% of your calories. I mean, that's where the starch solution is a practical solution.
Yes.
It's
yes.
kind of like a practical compromise. It's like, yes, if we want to have a gigantic civilization with, 7 billion people, right now we're not set up to feed all of them with fruit. I mean, we need something a little bit more practical. Maybe it's not as, the ultimate health. I mean, starch is great, but it's not as good as fruit. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you eat 100% sweet potatoes compared to 100% citrus, I just think I would feel better with the citrus. It might be easier to live on the sweet potatoes. I probably could eat a lot less. I wouldn't need as much land to produce the food with the sweet potatoes. But my opinion is that the highest level of health comes from eating fruit.
Well, now it's interesting. You say you wouldn't need as much land because there's an interesting point with orchards. When you have a tree, a fruit tree, you're getting three-dimensional production.
It's true.
When you're on a flat piece of land, you've got essentially two dimensions.
Yeah.
So orchards are interesting, and they're also really interesting in terms of preservation of the environment, sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, we need more orchards in the world. I mean, we don't have anywhere near enough.
I guess my kind of impetus in regards to this discussion is really what I see is this huge portion of society still relying on animal-based products. So my thing is, let's get them into the vegan umbrella, and then we can start moving towards more and more fruit. Get them because there's a big psychological jump from animal products to no animal products. And
right.
And if you try to start them off now some like 20-somethings can do this. They can go from animal products to completely raw, and they're psyched and they're doing great. But I think for most people, for most of the population, there's got to be this transition from cooked animal products to cooked vegetables, and then perhaps more and more raw, Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you got to go with like the tofurkey and the tofu and the I mean, you got to do some kind of a transition for sure. Hey, can I change the subject on you a little bit? Have you seen this movie Cowspiracy?
I have not. I hear it's good. Did you watch it?
You have to watch this movie. It's. I mean, I was kind of familiar with most of the information in the documentary, but the main idea is, well, there's a couple main ideas here. Sorry to divert you here, but
no.
There's a couple of main ideas. Number one is the number one cause of global warming is animal agriculture. Just from, the amount of methane and just all the pollution byproducts of animal agriculture. And I want to throw one stat at you that you might find a little bit shocking. There's around 7 billion people on the planet, right?
Yep.
And people always talk, oh man, there's too many people on the planet to support 7 billion people, right? Well, how many farm animals do you think there are on the planet? Take a guess.
I'm afraid to hear you tell. I think I've read this before. What is it? What is it, Barry?
It's 70 billion. There's 10 farm animals for every human being.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And, when you think, a human being produces a certain amount of waste, but a cow produces like 20 times as much waste as a human being. And, human sewage goes into a sewer system. There are some, efforts to, clean, not to just dump it into the environment, but cow waste, that just gets dumped into the water system. I mean, a lot of the problem with the pollution of our rivers, the fresh water in our country, farm animals are polluting our rivers.
I recently saw this thing. Some guys had sent up, drones. This is a whole nother thing, but these guys had this little drone they were playing with. So they sent it up and went over looking over their neighbor's property. Neighbor is a pig farmer, has this sewage, what do they call them? It's a field designated for pig sewage. It's like an open pond of sewage just sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah, see, the problem is, like, you can take a little bit of the waste from the animal and put it on a field and it's good. The problem is they have like 100 times too much waste and they just dump it on there, and then what happens? It rains and the stuff gets washed into the river, and then it gets into the river system. And that's kind of the problem. You
wouldn't have E. coli in spinach if they weren't, fertilizing with this crap from unhealthy cows. I mean,
yeah, it's terrible. So it's a great movie. I would recommend anyone to watch it. And there's kind of 2 points to it, too. The first one is that animal agriculture is the #1 cause of global warming, more than transportation. And the filmmaker, when he first kind of came across this idea, he was like, what are they talking about? The #1 cause of global warming is, of course, everybody thinks it's transportation. Yeah. Oil. Big oil is the reason for global warming, right? But the UN did this study, and their opinion was that animal agriculture was a much bigger contributor to global warming. So the filmmaker, he was kind of shocked. He was kind of like, well, I never got this information before, and I'm involved with Greenpeace. I'm involved with all the different, kind of globalwarming.org organizations out there. Yeah. And so he started going around to these different organizations to kind of get their take and see, why hadn't he heard this before? And he would get interviews with these people, and he would say, what's the #1 cause of global warming? And they would all say, well, it's big oil, it's transportation, it's that we're driving around so much, it's our cars. And he would say, well, what about animal agriculture? What about people eating meat? And they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's crazy. And so he would go to, like, Greenpeace wouldn't interview him, and the Sierra Club, he got one of these interviews. But one of the places where it's really obvious about the devastation of animal agriculture is in the Amazon, all right? Because, what's happening in the Amazon, it's really terrible. They have cattle farms in the Amazon, and people, everybody talks about how the Amazon is getting cleared out, like it's getting cut down, and they're doing something, right? A lot of people don't really know what exactly are they doing. I mean, are they putting up subdivisions, or maybe they're building new cities in the Amazon, or they're building highways, or he went to this one group, and he was like, well, what's the #1 cause of deforestation in the Amazon? And the person said, mining. Mining companies opening up mines, and oil companies putting down oil pipelines. He's like, no, that's ridiculous. What's the #1 cause of deforestation in the Amazon? And he asked this one person a couple times. And the first time she said mining and oil big oil and oil pipelines. And then he asked her again, he said, no, seriously, what's the #1 cause? And she said, it's cattle farming. And it's not really cattle farming, it's soy farming, because they got to feed the cattle something. The actual cattle themselves their factory farming doesn't take up much space. But to feed the animals, you have to clear massive amounts for soybeans. And she said it's soybean farming. That's why people are clearing out the Amazon. That's why, And let me just finish my point, Paul. Yeah. And then he asked her, why? How come nobody's really talking about this? And she said, well, people tried to stop it. People tried to get these big animal agriculture companies to stop doing this, and they got killed. And she talked about this woman, like a sister, I forget the woman's name. It was this Catholic nun who was down in Brazil trying to help poor people. And she made a stand and took a public stance that these companies are destroying the Amazon. They're kicking indigenous people out of their land, and they're killing them. And this woman made this public statement about this, and somebody came along one day and just shot her. They killed her. And so this woman who was running this, I think it was the Rainforest Action Network or some kind of a Save the Amazon group, she said most of the activists in Brazil who are trying to stop this, they're just faced with, they're either getting killed or they're faced with violence, the indigenous people in the Amazon who are standing up trying to save their natural way of life, you're getting killed. So, it's really tough. I mean, The Cowspiracy, it's a great movie. It's really going to, even if you are familiar with a lot of the facts about how bad animal agriculture is, it's going to open your eyes to some things you didn't really know are happening.
All right. So many things you're spurring to mind. One thing, I don't know if you're familiar, my sister used to go down to Brazil, and they have these restaurants there. I think they're called bodegas. And you go in there, and they have these long, long tables, and they bring tray after tray of meat.
Yeah.
So, and the terrifying thing about this is American culture exporting this habit of consuming large amounts of animal products. It's so tragic that while the United States has been successful in many regards, maybe technological advancement and perhaps education and what it's done in the world, it's also people associate the success of America with all of our habits. And these McDonald's getting exported, Coca-Cola, it's ironic, that there's like this negative side to it.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that single point right there, Americans exporting that idea of being, eating meat is equated with being wealthy and successful. I mean, if China gets that virus, it's devastating for this planet because, people can't live like Americans. I mean, Americans living like Americans is bad enough, but once Chinese people start living like Americans, it's devastating.
Yeah. And,
in the Cowspiracy movie, the filmmaker went out to a grass-fed, this place out in California where they have like 1,000 acres and they do grass-fed beef, right? Now, grass-fed beef, paleo people will always say, oh, you got to eat grass-fed beef. It's like the Garden of Eden. I mean, 1% of the paleo eaters can afford to eat, grass-fed beef. If everyone ate grass-fed beef, forget it. The planet would be totally destroyed. But he asked this guy, well, they're cutting down the Amazon to do meat, to do cattle ranching. And the guy who did the grass-fed beef, he's like, they shouldn't be eating cattle. They should not be eating meat. They should be eating, I mean, if they have the Amazon, they should be eating, fruit. And he didn't say fruit. He just said they shouldn't be doing grass-fed beef. But so, I mean, I really pray that Chinese people in particular realize that the American way of life, the American diet is an unhealthy diet, and it's going to pollute their country. It's already polluting their country, trying to live like Americans. It's going to totally pollute their country. It's going to make them very sick. I mean, if you look at all the information from the China study, China should stay, with the vegetables, a plant-based diet. They'll be a lot better off than the sick people in America.
Right, and I think that's the key. I think that's why the health argument is so useful, because people, most of us are, in the end, selfishly motivated. And when we talk about, environmental effects and ethics, it's kind of outside of our personal experience for most of us. It's something out there. But if you get a heart attack or you have a stroke, that's incentive, man.
Yeah.
So I love my friend Carlo, who's, ethics is the thing for him. And to a logical, reasonable person, you can present the ethical argument, and it's a very strong argument. But the psychology of most people is that what's in it for them? And that's why I think this health argument is so important. It's the way to bring it home. So it's like the key to this is clearing away the misinformation and getting it really deeply rooted into the public consciousness. What is the harmfulness of this way of living,
Yeah. It's tough, though, because you just have so much, you're fighting the capitalists. They have this huge system. I mean, just go to some, watch a health show on television, go to, Google News has a health-related section. Every time you go there, there's like a story about how eggs are good for you. I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's a tough battle because there's a lot of very wealthy people that have a lot of wealth invested in this system.
I know. I couldn't believe it. I recently did this posting of, you know Plant Positive, right?
Yeah.
He's amazing. And this thing he did on that Siri Torino study, so I tried to do a summary of that. And it just blew me away that when you see who funded that study. It was freaking Dairy Council, Cattlemen's Association. It was like, all you got to do is look at who funded these studies. I mean, then you use this study to mislead the public. That's pretty damn unethical, man.
It's very tough. I think the vegans have a huge uphill battle. I mean, thank God for something like YouTube. I mean, I think YouTube is, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Because what is it? It's people sharing their honest opinions. You don't get that anywhere else. Like there's other websites, but from mass media, you don't get an honest message. That's why, I love Dr. Grieger because he's so good at deciphering the medical results. Yeah. It's hard though. It's very easy. It's very easy to manipulate statistics and medical. You can do all sorts of medical testing that kind of clouds the truth. It's very hard. This is why I get back to that initial point that I made is you have to experiment by yourself. You have to take the ideas that are out there and apply them to your own life. And you yourself be the medical test. You do the testing yourself.
There's one aspect to that I'd like you to address. It seems that there's kind of a ecosystem within our body, right? There's kind of an internal ecosystem that's related to what we eat and also our lifestyle, but largely to what we eat. And it seems that when you eat a particular way for a while, the body acclimates and it develops the internal bacteria in a way that best suits this type of eating that you're doing.
Right.
Which means that whether you're eating SAD, paleo, cooked vegan, or raw vegan, in any one of those, the body adapts to that approach. And then when you switch to another, there's a transitional period. And
right.
It seems that for some styles, that transitional period is longer than others. Like maybe going from vegan to raw, like cooked vegan to raw vegan is not that huge a transition, but maybe cooked animal products to no animal products, there's a significant shift in the biological flora.
Right.
But what I wanted to ask you is, it seems like that could be one reason people don't get a common answer. Like you're saying, I think you would submit that if somebody simply tries a cooked vegan or a raw vegan diet, they'll eventually realize from personal experience that it's the best thing, right?
Hey, do you see what this is here?
Yes.
Do you know what this is?
Yeah, take your blood pressure?
Yeah, this is something that takes your blood pressure, right? So if you feel fine on a standard American diet, go get yourself one of these and take a reading, all right? As long as you're take your reading, write it down, Google your numbers, right? And then see if you're really feeling fine. Because I'm telling you, if you have high blood pressure, if you have a very high resting pulse rate, you're not healthy, right? You might feel okay, you're not okay.
Right.
Right.
I love that point. But I guess what I'm asking you to address is, sometimes you'll see in these paleo chat rooms that these folks were at one time vegetarian, and then
I would ask the paleo people, put yourself on, publish your numbers with this. Take your blood pressure readings on the paleo diet, and you know what? If you have healthy blood pressure on the paleo diet, maybe the paleo diet's good for you. I don't know. I don't see those guys sharing their numbers though, and I have a feeling if you're eating a lot of meat, you're having heart disease. You're going to have problems with heart disease.
I so agree, Barry, and I think as more data from low-fat vegans comes in, this will be this will be incontrovertible, or you know.
Yeah.
But for the time being, there's a lot of anecdotal personal experience where somebody says, well, I was vegetarian and I didn't do well on it, and then I brought meat back in my diet, and now I feel great. So,
I mean, if I could just hop in there 1 second. So, you know, the vegan diet, I mean, every diet requires some education. You know, like you can't calorie restrict yourself on the vegan diet. I mean, if you're eating a lot of fruit, it's very easy to undereat. You know, there's a lot of pitfalls that you can make. You know, I mean, there's the issue of B12. I mean, maybe you need to supplement on B12 if you're on the vegan diet. I take a B12 supplement.
Yeah.
You know, I had a blood test a year ago. All my numbers were fantastic, except for my B12 was low, and so I supplement. You know, if I went on the paleo diet or the standard American diet, instead of having one bad number, I'd probably have 50 bad numbers.
Thank you.
So, you know, I think, you know, but even with the vegan diet, it's not like you can do it and everyone's going to do it initially with no education. They're going to be perfect at it. That's not the case. A lot of people screw up the vegan diet. You know, I mean, you could be a junk food vegan, or you could eat potato chips all day and say you're a vegan. You know, a lot of people don't go, I mean, you have to go whole foods, right? You have to eat whole foods. You cannot eat processed food. Any processed food is bad for you. Anything that comes in a box has no, like an expiration date a year from now, isn't food. It's not going to make you well. It has to be whole. So even if you're eating cooked food, you know, like for me, cooked food is like things like squash and potatoes and steamed greens. That's cooked food for me. It's not something that's in the aisles, the packaged food aisles. Anything packaged, it's not good.
Exactly. That's great. That's great. I love that. You know, and I would say there are psychological and emotional aspects to diet, and even if we could absolutely identify the perfect diet in terms of the best ingredients, there's going to be people who are going to eat processed food. So I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you know, I occasionally do myself. You know, so my main thing is, you know, if you can do what you're doing, if you can really make it that pure, and that's the highest health you can reach, fantastic. For those
Right.
of you that can't, you know, the degree to which you can approach purity is that's how much health you'll see.
Yeah, and you know, the whole idea of like being pure, and like, I mean, look, I eat tofu sometimes, so I eat processed food too. I mean, it's hard to be 100% pure, and I think if you get obsessed with that, it's not really worth it. I mean, I think you need to say, you know, this is where I am right now. This is the point that I'm at right now. You know, which things are going to be health promoting for me, and which things are going to kind of hurt my health.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was out with friends the other night. I had a half a glass of wine. That wasn't a health promoting activity, but it's okay. All right, I'm still alive. You know.
Exactly.
And you don't want. I think probably a lot of people on YouTube who are not maybe new to being vegan or are just kind of curious about what it's about, they might get turned off by too much kind of a purity idea, you know, being 100% raw vegan or being 100% anything. For somebody who's eating a standard American diet, if they just started eating more fruit, if they were still eating the meat, you know, I think that's a bad idea. But if they're just eating more healthy, I think that's a great thing, because I know where that path will lead them. It will lead you more and more and more. It's just a natural progression. Like once you start getting into eating fruit, you don't want to eat cake. All right. Once you eat dates, you don't want to eat chocolate cake anymore. You know, you don't want, once you get into eating fruit, you don't want coffee. Now, I didn't. You know, I got into fruit. I'm like, geez, why do I need coffee?
Yeah.
So it's a normal path. You just want to get people going down the path.
I think that's great, Barry. And I think, too, kind of what you were saying earlier, maybe I lost it a little bit, but that sometimes perhaps the reason people have trouble on a vegan approach is that they're not doing it well. And if you are somebody who goes vegan and you continue to have problems, then you may, before you totally give up veganism, you might go down this line Barry's saying, which is get more and more pure, get it cleaner and cleaner, and see if that solves those issues. You know, there's a long history of people going vegan and then having too much fat in the diet, and so you can easily screw up your health by having too much fat, whether it's vegan or otherwise. So.
Yeah, but again, I'm not like super low fat. I mean, I think nuts are okay, and I think avocados are good, and you know, I think I'm okay with some fat, but it's easy to abuse it for sure.
Yeah, I am too, and I don't think I'm nearly as strict about fat as Esselstyn. I'm probably not as strict about fat as I should be. But I agree with you. I think, you know, some nuts and avocados, you know, in moderation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've heard the SOS plan, that's no sugar, no oil, and no salt. Those are kind of the real ones you should avoid, like processed sugar.
Okay, processed. Okay.
Yeah, they're not talking about nuts there. You know, I don't think they're talking about avocados, but they're talking about, you know, the processed oils, which really are not health promoting. Like I said, I sometimes I have olive oil, but it's not a health food.
And you do not use salt, Barry?
Sometimes I use salt, but you know, again, it's like it's not something you like. I have split pea soup, and without salt, it's tough. You know, but like again, I'm human. I'm just saying these are the things. These things I'm working on. I'm working on cutting them out.
I use salt. I don't think it's as horrible as some people think, but I know it's not a health food. But you know, if you're eating cooked food, I'm not going to eat a bowl of rice without some salt, or potatoes without salt. I mean,
yeah. If you ask Lauren Lockman, he'll say, "No way, that's terrible."
Yeah.
I mean, Lauren Lockman. Just to give you a flavor of what he's like. If you're drinking smoothies, that's not good. If you're that's not good. You got to eat the fruit.
Well, and he's amazing. I mean, he eats mangoes and papayas, and he has a lot of watery fruit he can eat, and that's great.
And just to be clear, I think that's the goal. I mean, that's where I'm trying to get to be like him. You know, I'm trying to do less smoothies because I do think it changes the food. Now, I worry that it damages the enzymes and a lot of the nutritional qualities. Like one thing I've noticed, like if I have a meal of like bananas, like in the past I would make a smoothie out of it, and I'd have to put in maybe like 7 or 8 bananas, right, to make a real solid smoothie. Yeah. But, you know, it's hard to eat 8 bananas. Have you ever eaten that many bananas?
I have, but I agree with you.
Just eat, not through a smoothie, but just eating them one after the other.
Yes, I have.
It gets tough. You start to gag after about 5 or 6. So now I'm trying to just eat the banana rather than always just blend it. Yeah. So I don't know.
All right. Before we move off of this topic, let me ask you one more thing on this. It happens once in a while that at a fasting facility like Lauren Lockman's, somebody has a problem. Now, I think it's foolish to extrapolate from one negative experience that the whole institution of therapeutic fasting should be thrown in the trash can, because I mean, if we went on that basis, the whole medical industry with traditional medicine would be thrown into the trash can. Their success rate is deplorable.
Yeah, if you look at a hospital, I mean, if you go to a hospital, people are dying left and right. I mean, people go to these places when they're sick, and sick people sometimes die. You know, I think fasting, I mean, I think it's pretty amazing. If you go out and try and find a video from True North, which is a fasting center in California, I saw one presentation where he went through, you know, they've been open for like a number of years, and he said, we've never lost anybody in the process of fasting.
That's great.
You know, I'm assuming people come there when they're sick. You know, they want to do an extended fast when they have health problems.
Right. And I think this event down at Dr. Graham's place where the girl had some kind of bacteria, you know, this is an anomaly. It probably never happened before. That's why they didn't have a protocol for it. It's a tragedy. It's a shame. It shouldn't have happened, but it did. But it doesn't mean that you can then write off all of the folks over the years that have benefited from this practice.
Yeah, and you know, similarly, I mean, you can't say, I don't think somebody who's in a really bad state physically can say to themselves, you know what, I'm not feeling well, let me go do a 40-day fast. That's insane. You know, I mean, that's not the way it works. The way it works is...
You mean without supervision or preparation?
Even with supervision, Lauren Lockman wouldn't let someone do that. I mean, you can't be really sick and then do an extreme fast to try and get back your health. You have to start off slow. I mean, you have to start off with like a 1-day fast. You know,
you reminded me of this story. I many years back, I went around to some of these fasting centers and I interviewed people who ran the centers. And there was one in New York. It was called the Pauling Health Manor. And I went up, and the guy let me talk to him for about a half an hour. And he said on one occasion, somebody brought the person to him. The person was actually dead in the car. They had died on the trip to the center. So that's how long people wait before they resort to fasting.
Yeah.
They'll wait until they're essentially dead, and traditional medicine can't do anything. Then they go to a fasting center. And the fact that is the case, and there still is the level of success that there is at fasting centers, should speak volumes.
Paul, people have been doing fasting for thousands of years. Thousands of years people have been fasting.
Yeah.
There must be something to it. There must be something there.
Yeah.
And you know, like experimenting on yourself, if you've never fasted, do a 24-hour fast.
Yeah.
See how you feel. Fasting is a little bit tough because it's not like you go do a fast and then you feel good. A lot of times you do a fast and you feel bad because your body is going through some kind of a cleansing process. I mean, I did a 36-hour fast and I had a headache and it was terrible. I couldn't move. But then after you end the fast, you have some fruit. You know, you wait a day, because if you do a 36-hour fast, it's going to take your body like 36 hours to recover. After that additional 36 hours, see how you feel.
It's a great point. It's a great point, Barry. And I've done some fasting. The longest I ever did was 2 weeks. 2 weeks on water. So, wow. And I've done a couple.
So you're an expert. You should be telling me about this stuff.
Well, it's fascinating. You know, one of the cool things about fasting is you observe the body detoxify. The body will go through different detoxification events over the course of the fast. So like you said, you know, you have a 36-hour fast, you had a headache. You could have that on a lengthy fast, but often what will happen is the body will go through an elimination, and then you come back to kind of a normal state. Then you go another 5 days, the body will do something else. You go another 5 days or 10 days, the body will do something else. And it's like the longer you're on the fast, the digger the body deeps. The deeper the body digs into the body and into the, you could say, the unhealthy deposits that exist within the body.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I have to say about fasting, and I want to touch on like a spiritual idea here. All right, you have to really, I mean, we have this huge medical industry in this country. All these medical procedures, people are getting sick left and right. I'm part of a big church. There's so many sick people with diabetes and cancer and heart disease. It's everywhere. And you know, when they pray, they want to pray for guidance from the doctor, that the doctor can help them get over these terrible illnesses that they have. And it's really terrible because if you just start fasting, your body starts healing itself. And you know, when you really think about that, I think this has to be considered like a proof of God's existence. That, you know, just think about it. You just stop eating and your body starts healing. It's kind of, I mean, if that's true, if that's really true, you have to really say, you know, that God must have, there must be something purposeful there. I mean, what an incredible thing that if you just stop eating, your body starts healing. I don't know.
I love what you're saying, Barry.
You got to really think about that because I think there's something really deep there. I don't know.
It's miraculous. You know, think about it. When you get a cut, what happens? you get a cut that's not, it's not like the severing of a limb or something. You get a cut, the body will heal it. I mean, it's miraculous. It's a miracle that the body can do that. And as you say, you know, animals in nature show us this all the time. They feel sick, they go sit in a corner and wait. They don't eat. And this goes back to what you were saying earlier. When you eat, there's a tremendous amount of energy that the body uses to digest food. If you take out that loss of energy, the body can redirect it and use it for other processes such as cleansing.
Right.
So, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And that's what kind of upsets me, is that fasting is getting a bad rap by either someone who, you know, runs an institution carelessly, or someone has a bad experience at an institution. As you said, fasting's been done for thousands of years, and a lot of people have benefited greatly from it. So next to these bad stories we hear, we should also hear the many stories. You know, Dr. Shelton fasted tons of people who had cancerous tumors, had all kinds of diseases, and they overcame them through fasting.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and let me take this a step further too. So obviously, you fast, there's this opportunity to improve your health, but people fasted. Like if you go through the Bible, Jesus fasted, Moses, Elijah, David, all these people fasted. You change mentally when you fast. You change spiritually when you fast, because you put your body through. You go through a very tough time. And I think if you're somebody who's dealing with addictions, there's just so many reasons to fast, even beyond the health reasons, because it changes you spiritually. I mean, it's a major thing for spiritual people. I mean, if you have a spiritual practice, if you're not an atheist, all right, if you have some idea that you want to have a relationship with God, normally people just talk about prayer. Prayer is how you have a relationship with God. But there's another thing that you can do. It's fasting. I mean, fasting will change your spiritual practice. It'll be a significant event. If you're dealing with addictions, whatever the drug addictions, whatever they are, you do fasting. That's going to make a difference.
Barry, if you still have some more time, can I end this and call you back and we'll do a part 2?
Sure.
All right.